So, today on Author Nation Interviews, we are diving deep into a fascinating topic that impacts every nonfiction author: the influence of our egos on our writing and our book promotion. I'm your host, Melody Ann, and I'm excited to guide you through this exploration of self awareness and its impact on our successes. This is Author Nation, and our mission here is to empower you with valuable insights, inspiration, and resources that fuel your success. You can visit authornation.online, which is your gateway to a wealth of resources ranging from expert writing tips, dynamic marketing strategies, all designed to help you thrive and leave a lasting mark in the world. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and get ready to uncover the way our egos can shape our writing and our ability to effectively promote our books. But first, let me introduce our guest. Stephen Hawley Martin is a former marketing executive and consultant and the author of more than 36 books, including 5 published novels, half a dozen business management titles, and quite a few self-help books and metaphysical investigations. He is the former principal of the world-renowned advertising agency, the Martin Agency, the firm that created the Geico Gecko. Oh my God, I love that Geico Gecko. The Geico Gecko and Virginia is for Lovers. Oh, I remember that. Today, Stephen is editor and publisher of the Oakley Press, listed in the Who's Who in America, and best known as an award-winning author. Stephen is the only 3-time winner of the Writer's Digest Book Award, having won twice for fiction and once for nonfiction. He has also won first prize for visionary fiction from Independent Publisher and first prize for nonfiction from USA Book News. He and his wife of 35 years live in Central Virginia. Welcome to the show, Stephen. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Melody Ann, and I'm so glad to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm so excited about. Let's just jump right in, okay?
Yeah.
I found your book, Let Go Your Ego, and I was so intrigued. So just let's start with the basic. What is ego and how does it develop?
Yeah, well, my definition of ego may be a little bit different than what people have learned in school. So excited. Really, that part of you that's buried in your unconscious mind that has been programmed by the culture you were born into, the family you were born into, what your parents taught you, what your teachers taught you. And often there's a lot of misinformation that's in there that can trip you up. I guess Sigmund Freud had 3 parts to what probably would be the ego in my definition, and that's the superego, the ego, and the id. The superego is the part of you that is your parent that says you should do things, this, you shouldn't do that, and so on. The id is the child part of you that kind of wants things and is selfish. And then the ego for Freud would be more like what I think you ought to try to program your ego toward, which is your rational self that makes informed decisions based on the facts rather than on your emotions. So that's my definition of ego.
Yeah, sounds good. So by your definition, ego can be helpful or it can be harmful. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You have to have an ego. A lot of new age type people will tell you need to get rid of your ego completely. Well, you can't, maybe if you become an enlightened guru sitting on top of a mountain somewhere, meditating, you could live without an ego, but you got to have one because it's what really sets your boundaries between you and other people. But, animals don't have egos. We human beings developed egos over the millennia and evolution, really as a kind of survival device. It's what keeps us from, it protects us because it keeps us from. It realizes the lion might eat us. He's not our friend. Things like that.
Yeah.
So you got to have an ego, but your ego can get you in trouble because there may be stuff programmed in there that is holding you back. For example, fear of failure is very common. Perhaps when you were growing up, you had things go wrong, or somebody in your life said you oh, you'll never make it, kid, that kind of thing. And it's buried in there. And so the fear of failure can cause you to be a procrastinator, put things off, not make decisions which turn out to be actually making decisions that are bad, that sort of thing. There are all kinds of ways that your ego can be programmed, and you don't realize it, but it can cause harm. And
Yeah, absolutely. So it can be positive. It can be positive by helping us draw boundaries, by keeping us confident, and it can be harmful if it's being if it's being tampered with in a negative way, and it can help us lose self-esteem. Then it harms us by we lose self-esteem, or our boundaries are too tight and protective, or not tight enough, and we're open and vulnerable to whoever comes along. Is that right?
well, that's true. And for example, if you for some reason have come to think that you're a victim, that people are out to get you or something, you're going to see all kinds of things that may or may not be real that are going to reinforce that. That's what your ego does. Your ego wants to reinforce your beliefs. And if you got some beliefs that aren't helping you, it's going to hold you back. So there you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about so in your book, ego, where you're letting go of your ego. So how can your ego get in the way of you writing a book? So if authors are out there, my audience, nonfiction authors, they want to write their book, I think ego can get in the way. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think there are a couple of ways that can happen, Melody Ann. For example, we already mentioned, if you have fear of failure, it can lead to writer's block. So you're afraid subconsciously to go ahead because you're afraid you might not do the right thing. You might not write the right thing. That's one way. Another way that's obvious to me is that it may cause you to be very opinionated. If you're writing a nonfiction book, you typically need to be balanced in terms of how you present information, so that if there are a couple of different opinions about what you're writing about, you need to kind of give equal time to each one, even though maybe later on you say, but for me, I really feel this way. But, if you're an opinionated person, if your ego feels very strongly about something and gives you that feeling that, that other person can't possibly be right, I think that could be harmful. So there you go. There's a couple of things.
That makes perfect sense. Now, I also think that there are authors out there who write these amazing books, but nobody ever finds them because there's something in their ego. I've had authors call me and say, so I want to write the book, but I don't want to promote it like that. That's not what I don't want to, like, somebody else needs to do that. I just want to find a publisher and they just promote the book for me. And we know that's not how it works. So it seems to me that there's, and I don't know if it's ego, but like, if I write it, they will come, kind of, if I build it, they will come mindset. So I think that somehow that's ego impeding us. Is that correct?
I definitely think so. I think you're onto something there. Author that I published his book, and before it came out, he decided, he got almost panicked and said, I don't want my name on the book. We're going to have to use a pseudonym. Well, what's going on there? It's fear of criticism. He's afraid that his friends are going to read the book and they're going to, there's something in there that he, for some reason, feels embarrassed about, doesn't want other people to know. So he not only, this guy is the chairman and CEO of a public company. And I was thinking, when I agreed to publish his book, gosh, I can promote this book. This guy's, he's a real achiever. And he's a CEO of a big company that's traded on the stock exchange. Gosh, I could sell lots. Well, now he wants the pseudonym. I can't do that because, it's John Joe or whatever. I think he came up with, well, I won't tell you the name he came up with. But anyway, I think that probably is due to the fear of criticism, which is one of the common fears that that many egos have buried in their little subconscious part of your mind.
Yeah. And that I find that really interesting because I have worked with authors who have put a memoir out there, for example. I've actually worked with authors who've put a complete work of fiction out into the world and had family come back and say, I'm pretty sure that's me. And I don't
Oh,
like how you wrote about me, right? So yes, there's this fear of rejection, of criticism, but okay, it can happen. And so what, Stephen? Then what?
yeah, unless you have, you just got to have developed the thick skin, I guess, that what I'm trying to get people to do with this book, Let Go Your Ego, which is, who cares what other people think, unless you have slandered them in some way so they're going to sue you. And certainly as a writer, you're smart enough not to do that. What the heck? In fact, if people get upset, it might be good because people will be talking about your book. Certainly,
Right.
people are publishing books all the time where they want people to get upset, and because it draws attention to them, and more people buy it. Oh, did he really say that? Well, I got to read that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just get over it.
Yes. So sometimes our egos are too fragile. So there are people who are too strong. The ego's too strong. They're opinionated, or interestingly enough, when people can't handle other people's opinions, I wonder it looks like they're strong-headed, but I actually wonder if they have a fragile ego, right? And so we have these fragile egos, and what you're saying is, look, you just have to go out and do your thing and stop worrying about everyone else, and let things bounce off of you, right? That's part of a healthy ego, is just letting things bounce away and not worrying about it.
Yes, I think people with true self-esteem aren't bothered as much by criticism. It's the person who, as you said, has a fragile ego, who kind of wants to puff themselves up and wants to reject any kind of criticism as an attack on them. Somebody who really is sure of themselves deep down and has confidence, so that's your problem, what you think about me, not my problem. And
I like
that
that.
would be the attitude.
I like that.
Yeah.
So your book, Let Go Your Ego, we can find information about it at oakleypress.com.
Well, probably the best place to find out about it would be on my personal website, which is shmartin.com, shmartin, martin.com. And it's there. All my books are on my personal website. The Oakley Press would probably have it in the self-help or nonfiction section, but there'll be a lot of other books there too that aren't.
Yes, because you are actually a publisher as well.
Correct. I have been publishing books for myself and for others since 1995. I started the business, the Oakley Press, when I was still in the advertising agency business, and kind of did it on the side for a while. My first book was published by a regular author, and I was disappointed at how they marketed it. So I figured, heck, I can do a better job of this myself. So in 1995, I opened the Oakley Press. We've got about 170 books in print now.
Lovely. So Oakley Press. So you'd like to learn more about Stephen, or you'd like to learn more about Stephen's publishing, you can find it at Oakley Press. And that is actually OAKLEA press.com, just so everyone knows. It's a slightly different spelling. All right. So if ego creates obstacles, such as writer's block, imposter syndrome, fear of rejection, how can authors get out of their own way? How can they build a healthy ego so they can get through the things they want to do and find more success?
Well, there are a number of ways which are covered in the book, but I think the most important way, and the way to begin, I suppose, is to realize that your ego is not you. Your ego is a construction that was built up since birth, and you can step back from your and you can determine what's going on with your ego that's not helping you. And one way you do that is between stimulus and response, between the time something happens and when you react to it. there's a moment there, there's a gap that you can stop yourself and stop and think, why am I feeling this way about that? Did something happen in my childhood or in my past that was caused me to feel this way, that it's dredging up? And so you rather than react, and earlier I talked about the superego, the ego, and the id. It may be your id that's reacting. Go to what Freud called the ego, which is your rational self, your self that makes decisions without worrying so much about emotions and looks at the facts. Go to that self and operate out of that self. What I try to do myself, and what this is something I've been at for a long time, is stay in that middle ego, rational self, and not react to things, to think about them first, and then, come back with what is the best way to address an issue.
Yeah.
I think that, so if you could do that, and something else, I have on my personal website a page that has a couple of recordings on it. Yeah, you're putting it up there in the screen.
Yeah.
A couple of recordings on it that people can use. The one at the top of the page I used more than 25 years ago. It's actually me speaking, and it's the same auto-suggestion, self-hypnotic recording that I used 25 or 30 years ago to reprogram my ego. And so I decided to write this book and to use that recording and offer it to people. The second recording on the page is sort of a follow-up. What I suggest is that you listen to that recording that I made so long ago at bedtime every night for about a month as you drift off to sleep. And it will, or listen, before you do that, listen to it all the way through so you know what's on it, that it's not programming you to be a serial killer or something like that. But listen to it nightly. And I've had people who have done that, who have told me that it changed their life for the better. It was, just a magnificent thing. And they've become much more successful and so forth as a result. So there you go.
I love it. Thank you so much. So does your ego get in your way? I mean, a lot of people say, the expert, right? It's, we never fully hit the peak, do we? Right? It's always going to come back, isn't it?
Well, there are times, I have to admit that sometimes I get angry, for example, somebody does something, but I usually am able to catch myself. Although there are times when maybe I go too far, but it's definitely not a problem, as big a problem as it was before I started this process that I've been describing to you. So yeah, but it happens.
Yeah. Sometimes people think they have to be perfect. And I just want to point out that no, we don't have to be perfect. And one of the things I often say to people, when something happens, your defenses go up, or your fear goes up, or your anger goes up. And what we often do is if we've been told we're not allowed to be angry, we're frustrated with ourselves for being angry. What I often say is just kind of remove all the judgment and get curious. Well, why did that make me fearful? Well, my anger just went up so suddenly, so quickly. I wonder what was going on there. That's what I often say to people, is remove the judgment and get curious.
Well, I think that's excellent advice. That's a different way of saying some of what I've been saying about stop and think before you react.
Yes, exactly. All right, perfect. So let's wrap up. What would you say are 3 takeaways or maybe action items for authors who are in the state of fear or imposter syndrome? What are 3 things they can do? Step 1, step 2, step 3 to sit back in the rational ego.
Well, I would say that what I've been saying just now, which is, and you said, which is to think before react. But if you've got writer's block, one of the things I would do for that, and it's not something I've had long ago, but I've not had writer's block in many years. turned out over 3 dozen books. But the way I got over that was, if I'm writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but particularly nonfiction, get all your research together, read it, go over it, and don't start immediately. Do it in the afternoon, for example, and then that night, before you go to sleep, tell yourself that you want your subconscious mind to get all that stuff organized so that in the morning when you wake up, it's going to just come flowing. You're going to have a muse singing to you, and you're going to, for me, that works. And something else, in the morning when you first wake up, don't immediately get up and get out of bed and go jump in the shower. Take a little bit of time, because that's when, for me at least, and I think I've had other people tell me it's true for them, when your best ideas come for your book, or something you need to do in the book you're writing that you might have left out or not thought about, is when in the morning, in that first half hour of just after waking up, is if you let yourself think and relax, it'll come to you often. And so that's another thing. And then the third thing is, this doesn't have to do with the ego, but if you're a nonfiction writer, fiction writer, whatever you are, and you do your own proofreading, always run the thing through Google Docs. It's great at picking up little stuff that you miss because you're so used to looking at the copy. So those are 3 things for you.
Brilliant. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate you having you here today. And I really love talking about the ego. I think it's such a fascinating topic, and something where we can really improve our own lives by just working on our egos.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found this discussion of letting go of your ego both useful and, I shouldn't say letting go of your ego, should I? That's terrible. Of building up a healthy ego, useful and inspiring. Visit authornation.community for writing advice, marketing advice, and community support. Join the conversation and connect with fellow authors who share your passion and your drive. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review or a comment and share it with somebody who will benefit from it. Keep writing, keep creating, and keep sharing your story with the world.